a really good point that I just want to make sure doesn't get lost, which is eating organic matters. I can't tell you the number of people that tell me, well, either they can't afford it or they don't understand the importance of it. I have women whose spouses laugh when and are shocked at how much they spend to buy organic. And I really want to hammer home to you, to everybody, and feel free to elaborate on this, Ingrid. Eating organic is one of the most important things you can do to prevent all cancers. But pesticides and the growth hormone and the antibiotics in your meats, those are all endocrine disruptors, and they will put you on the side of estrogen dominance. So this is not a joke. This isn't a fad. This is your life. And I really want people to get how important it is to eat organic. That has to be like number one, don't you think? Yeah.
No, exactly. So the thing is that when I do put the people in front of the camera and they're eating their drive-through McDonald's or whatever they might be up to, and these women's images, the gray scale, the gray inverted palette, has all these vessels all over the place, this estrogen dominance. And then if you get to the website, you can see people after getting onto the program, changing their diet, getting rid of some of these disruptors, things that are, more helpful. Essentially, they totally clean up. So I can reverse a lot of these women about 65% of the time in 6 to 12 months. And that's prevention to me. That's awesome. That's the number one thing, is to change this. And if you think about the expense of eating organically, and it is difficult for some families, but they might be able to look at the dirty dozen on the fruits and vegetable list that's the most sprayed. The other thing I tell people is find a farmer's market, maybe near them, and then they can get boxes of fruits and veggies. And the other thing they can do is they can go to their local grain store where the farmers buy their grains and things for their farm, and just ask the guy, well, who are the organic farmers here? Who are you selling organic grain to? And you might be able to find, Farmer Jones living down the road there, and say, well, when you butcher your chickens or, meat, I'd like to get X amount, packaged up into my freezer. So you might be able to find local sources of the organic foods in that fashion. But think of the cost of what it's going to cost your family if you get a cancer diagnosis.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Is that, I have my first book that I wrote, I dedicated to a patient of mine who had breast cancer, and she was given 3 months to live and turned it into 11 years and did amazing on her 51st birthday. Around that time she passed. And I learned so much in that journey with her. And one of the things I learned was cancer is incredibly expensive. So in her last year of life, she spent $65,000 alone on conventional medicine. That was on what her insurance didn't cover. So if you're contemplating the expense of organic food, I first think about the expense of disease, and then look at things like your Starbucks, your daily habits that you might be doing that are causing cancer. This is why I'm such a fan of fasting. We could all save money if we start implementing fasting strategies. But put it into perspective here. Please understand. I hope people walk away from this really understanding the power of quality, chemical-free food. So important for your health. So again, thank you for commenting on that.
And the other thing is that sometimes it's hard for a woman to sell this potentially to her husband.
Right.
But if he's ending up eating a lot of bovine growth hormones in his meat and dairy and everything else that's being sprayed, his chances of developing prostate cancer is fairly high. And then all these estrogen mimickers are also going to interfere with growing children. So some of these young men, or if they get like a job in landscaping and they're using these herbicides and things, their sperm count is going to drop precipitously. And we're now seeing the numbers of births here in the US beginning to drop. I mean, some of the people are waiting until they're older and then they can't conceive, but their sperm counts are dropping. And then you can also see these little girls, I'm 67. So when I was 12 or 13, all my little girlfriends and I were all flat chested. None of us had a bra between us. Right. But these little teeny girls, and they're, this tall with 36C breasts on them. And it's because of their drive-through McDonald's, the bovine growth hormones, the plastics, they're microwaving in plastics. The plastic moves into your food at 87 degrees. So get rid of your microwave, put it in a saucepan with some water and a lid on it, or put it in a little roasty toasty oven to heat it up. But all these xenoestrogens that are floating around are affecting these little kids. And then you start looking at obese children in middle school. 65% of them are all overweight. And you start looking at these empty calories and the bovine growth hormones. I mean, there's this cascading thing. So I think if the woman looks at her youngsters and says, well, honey, we should be buying this and at least getting some of the things that are hormone-free or antibiotic-free. And then if you can take the next step of getting it organically raised, meaning that the grains that the animals may be eating is not genetically modified and organic grains, or get a little permaculture backyard. I mean, I have chickens in my backyard. I have all sorts of fruits and veggies and berries and nut trees and stuff in my backyard. So a lot of things can be done. You can do a lot of things in containers, so there's a lot of things that you can do with the food sources.
Yeah, and I always tell people take steps, So the first thing is decide I'm going to do only organic vegetables. And then maybe the next step is I'm only going to have organic meats. And you just start to take steps. Then I'm going to stop using our microwave. Like what you said is so important. Don't put your food in plastic and then put it in the microwave. Not only do you kill all the enzymes, but it's dead food now. You've now absorbing plastic. So you can, what I would do if this was all like blowing you away, all this information, is I would go back, I would re-listen to it, and I would make a checklist. And I would say, okay, here are all the things that I heard Ingrid say. Now what can I address and what can I do? And let me make one other comment on that, Ingrid. My daughter, so I have a 19-year-old daughter and a 16-year-old son. And I remember when she went through puberty, it was much later than the rest of her friend group. And it was almost like socially unacceptable. And I kept reminding her that you're not filled with these endocrine disruptors. You've been raised in a natural home. So you're going through puberty at the normal time you're supposed to go through it. You're not supposed to go through puberty at 10 and 11. And so I think these things have become standards and norms that we have to stop and take a step back and say, oh my gosh, our environment is toxic. What can I control so that there's not this large hormonal consequence?
Yes, exactly. And then so
thank you. Oh, we lost her. She'll come back for a moment. So here's what I want to point out is that toxins are, if you are given a cancer diagnosis, you want to start by looking. I lost you for a moment. And I think
I bumped the keyboard. I apologize.
No worries. I kept talking, but let me finish my thought and then I want to come back to you. What I was saying is if somebody is either given a cancer diagnosis or you want to prevent cancer, I really think a good starting point is your toxic environment, to really look at what toxins you can avoid. I think, and I love your book has great resources in it. You go to Ingrid's website. Like, this is a woman on a mission who has given us more resources than most oncologists will give. So
I try very hard. So with the book, you also get 1,028 pages of medically indexed materials and a 45-minute progressive muscle relaxation guided beach imagery as waves of serenity. And I created this when I was training at the Harvard Mind Body Medical Institute with Dr. Benson. So it comes as a CD, DVD, and also a download. But if you buy the book or the ebook, you get this download, a 45-minute thing, and all the resource materials for free. Because my mission is to educate people. So that's the super important part of it. And because in the time left, because I know that we started a little bit late because my machine wasn't working.
We're good. We got at least 20 minutes, so we've got some time.
Okay. So would I be able to jump into the cryoablation, which is the really sexy part of my book?
Yeah. So let me ask you one more question. I just want two more questions because I know my resetters are going to ask this. Where does stress play a part in the building of cancer? What part, when you held up the meditation CD, I was reminded that I think we also need to just help people put into perspective what stress does to the immune system. And then I have another question about thermography, and then we'll go on to cryoablation.
Sure. No, the stress is really important. There's a whole study now called psychoimmunology. Started out at Harvard, but has been spreading. But essentially, your thoughts, how you perceive things, fear, anxiety, not getting enough sleep. So all of these things are related to using this other progressive muscle relaxation guided beach imagery. But anything that people can do to decrease their stress level, or exercise, Pilates, power of prayer. It doesn't make any difference which one it is. Get with a group of friends that love laughing. Laughing's it's just wonderful. You just feel so happy afterwards. But try to change your thinking. So if you're glum and depressed and saying, oh my goodness, your body knows this, and it talks to all the cells within the body. So it's really important to start shifting around to see if you can decrease your stress, and also the importance of sleep, which I mention in the book as well. So
how much sleep should we be getting? How much sleep should we get?
I'd like at least 7 or 8 hours if you can, because a lot of people are trying to have sleep disruptions of 6, and then they're just sluggish and they can't get through the day. And there's taus and these tangles in the brain that we've been learning about, that if you don't get the right amount of sleep, the brain isn't able to be rejuvenated. So then you're sort of looking at Alzheimer's, and people are not eating the right fats. I mean, that's I could probably go on for a whole other thing about that. So maybe I'll take your thermography question and get to some other wild juicy stuff.
You speak my language, and it's like sometimes those of us that are out there trying to educate people on what's damaging our health, you get a little bit like people looking at you like you're a two-headed dragon. It's I always say, if you want the health that most people have in America, and we've got viewers all over the world, if you want that health, that poor health, then just do what they did. If you want a different type of health, then you're going to have to step out of that paradigm, and you're going to have to look at some of these things and what I love is you're just rambling off science, and there is so much science behind all of this. So I could hear you go on for hours, but here's my question on thermography. If somebody goes and gets a diagnosis with a potential breast cancer situation from a mammogram, would it behoove them to go and get a thermography reading to just see if that was accurate?
Sure. Now, I see a lot of people that come that, they feel that there's something wrong, or their intuition, or they found a lump that they couldn't seem to see, at the structural study radiology departments, and they come to see me. And if I see a heat signature and blood flow, this neoangiogenesis leading across the chest wall, this woman will either try to get more of a targeted ultrasound, or, some of the women have said, well, I've been following this by thermography. It's getting worse. There's more blood flow. The nipple deltas are going up in temperature. I'm just walking around with this thing. And some of the women, there's actually 2 surgeons here in town that will surgically biopsy this lump if it's palpable, if they can find it, and just remove it. And, when they do that, frequently what happens is it goes off to pathology, and they say, oh, lo and behold, there was cancer in this thing, but it wasn't detected on mammograms or ultrasounds, because I'm finding it 3 to 8 years before the mammogram and ultrasound is going to find it. The other problem with the ultrasounds is it's a bit of a crapshoot, unfortunately. So the ultrasounds, and this was told to me by Dr. Cindy Tortorelli, who used to run the Mayo Clinic Breast Center. She's up at Epic Imaging now in Portland. But she said the problem with the ultrasounds is also about the ultrasound technique. So the cursor for the ultrasound has to be right over the top of this palpable area. And if they come in from the side, they may not see it, because the ultrasounds generally don't see things less than, say, 6 millimeters. So it has to be sort of bigger than 6 millimeters for them to maybe see it, if the ultrasound probe is right over the top of it. But I have a little good news for your listeners. Very shortly, and I didn't write it down here, but I can probably try to spell it. But there's a fellow named Dr. Peter Littrup, who I now visit with. He's in Detroit. So it's Littrup. And he's an interventional radiologist. And he's sort of the father of breast cryoablation, but he created a device to freeze prostate cancers in place using liquid nitrogen, which is not cryoablation. But he has created something called Delphinius, and I think it's Delphinius, and Delphinius is a 3D ultrasound, and he's going to be able to sell this to clinics coming up this November. He has a group of these different units out, mostly in medical schools. The closest to me is in LA at USC. USC. And if you get there, they'll do a free 3D ultrasound and a mammogram, because they're doing this clinical trial that, you know, you can get it for free. But hopefully we'll have these other bits of equipment. But I think they're going to put mammograms out of business because they have the sensitivity of an MRI. My high-end military camera has a 97% sensitivity. The MRIs are 98%. Mammograms on a good day, if you don't have dense breasts, might be 62% effective. The ultrasounds are maybe 67 or so percent. So I run circles around the mammogram with a high-end military camera. So if I can find these areas, what I then try to do is get them targeted so that they can either have surgery or get it biopsied or get them to cryo. And if they can't see anything to target, because you have to see something for cryo to be able to get the probe into the area, then the woman just tries really hard on the proactive program to see if she can reverse it. So it's, you know, trying to do lifestyles to change, because these things are taking 10 to 12 years to grow to the point where it's palpable. So it's a very slow moving thing. So trying to get these young women at 35 or so to start making these changes so that they don't come to see me at 54 with a full-blown cancer.
Yeah.